the Phil Mikan Show. Another great morning. Summertime, 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 summertime. It's summertime, and I love it. I love it. Labor Day is just around the corner. It's late this year. I think it's September 7th, which is the first Monday of September. First Monday of the month is when Labor Day falls. I believe that's by statute. I'm not sure. And kids are starting school in many areas today, which is the 26th of August, and I'm sure they're just happy and bouncing and having a great time like that. I have a guest that is looking to be pretty good. This is going to be a good one. His name is O'Donovan Murphy, and he is the director of the Connecticut Judicial Marshal Svs. He does not look like Matt Dillon. He did not come in a 10-gallon hat. He's not wearing cowboy boots. But marshals in the American Association, and I've just dated myself, marshals are really kind of thought of as a Western entity, and we got that through television in the 50s and 60s with Matt Dillon, and there were a whole mess of others. And those were federal marshals, and usually they were federal deputy marshals. Marshals are few and far in between. There would be, or there is a marshal probably for Connecticut or the New England region. It might be a marshal for 6 states. And then they have deputies, and they have a chief deputy and a district deputy, and then all the other deputies, all the other federal marshals are deputies. We have a similar structure in Connecticut. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You basically, but the difference also is that the Federal Marshal Service was put together by, I believe it was George Washington, and it was right after the Revolutionary War they put it together, and it was done to basically guard the judges. It was to make the judges safe initially, and then they expanded because they had full powers of arrest and everything else.
Correct.
So is that the way this interview is going to go? Are you going to do yes and no and correct?
No, I'm disagreeing.
I can bring my wife in for that.
I'm disagreeing with you, that's all.
I have my wife come in every once in a while, and I'll say, how do you like what you're doing? She's, yes, I do. Yeah. But the marshal services in Connecticut, it used to be sheriffs, and it was deputy sheriffs, and then they converted it from sheriffs to marshals.
That's correct. There were actually special deputies, and the special deputies were the traditional security of the court and worked at the pleasure of the sheriff over 8 counties, and then there were deputy sheriffs that were more process servers for civil.
Yeah, you associated the sheriffs with the lawyers. Lawyers would have a sheriff serve papers and like that, come to court, or we're suing you, or whatever it was.
Right.
And do the marshals do that now?
That still exists now. There's a slight crossover. There is the state marshals, the deputy sheriffs became state marshals. They're still independent contractors. They still go out and serve subpoenas in some civil process. The judicial. So
your marshals don't serve papers?
They don't. The only civil matter that will serve a state capias for a support matter. So we will arrest someone who's wanted for child support as long as they're within our jurisdiction.
But you're not servers as such.
No, we don't go out and do evictions or serve papers. No.
Yeah, and that's really what it was. They could serve papers for foreclosures. They could serve papers for the sheriffs would do that. And the change was when we said 2000.
The change in December of 2000.
That was under Rowland's administration.
Correct.
Yeah, and he was the one that really, his administration was the one that really pushed to get rid of the sheriffs. There were 8 sheriffs.
There were 8 county high sheriffs.
Right, and they were elected. Sheriffs are elected.
They were elected. Each sheriff had a chief deputy sheriff, and then they had I don't know how they came up with the amount of deputies they could have in each county.
Budget allocation, whatever.
They had a preset number of deputies they could have for each county.
And the deputy sheriffs were, again, the deputies are somebody that a marshal can self-appoint, or the sheriff can self-appoint.
Correct.
You don't have to be appointed by the hierarchy or whatever.
They were self-appointed by the sheriff. You served at the pleasure of the sheriff, and you served officially during his term, although as the new sheriffs were elected, they never really had a wholesale change of staff. They seemed to retain whatever deputies.
Yeah, onesie, twosie, whatever, for the efficiency of whatever they're doing. And that's all gone now. The sheriff's service as such is gone, and you now have the marshal service and it's judicial. And basically, if you go to a court, you can't help but see the marshals. They're all uniform. They look like uniformed officers.
Correct.
They're unarmed. They don't have firearms. Some courts have armed. I think down south they have armed marshals or sheriffs in the courts.
I would say the majority of states have
unarmed
to armed.
They are armed.
Internal security.
Yeah.
Connecticut might be one of the last few states that still has.
Oh, really? Really? I thought it was more common than that. But they're shooting people doing news reports, for God's sakes. I mean, what's going on? It's getting a little nuts.
I
think I'm going to get a marshal.
I think for us, we look at every alternative constantly. I'm sure we'll have some discussion again each time something like this happens. I know we had a lot of discussion after Sandy Hook as to what would
Sandy Hook is mind-boggling.
The better precautions and kind of weigh the pros and cons against arming.
Now, marshals aren't unarmed, but they are armed for basically hand-to-hand combat or close altercations. They have sprays and a baton and things like that. They have handcuffs, but they're not armed to shoot back.
The marshals are trained, certified peace officers. They have batons, and they do go and spray and cuffs, and they go through extensive training on self-defense.
Yeah, because they come up with some pretty strange people in the courts. I mean, you're dealing with some guys that are.
Yeah, it's a tough job.
Yeah, it is. It really is. People think it's a tough job.
And when you think that we actually handle anyone who's ever arrested, anyone who's got a divorce.
Yeah, that's somebody from a shoplifter to a guy who's killed 5 people in a car.
Correct. So, the marshals were the ones who transported the 2 gentlemen in Cheshire, if I can refer to them as that, in the Cheshire matter, back and forth from prison. For us, I think what we do a lot more from a technology standpoint and a lot more planning, taking into consideration that the marshals aren't armed.
Everybody has seen, in terms of on the highway, the marshal vans, the little white vans with the caged windows, and just imagine what's inside the back because you never see. And you should make those out of glass. So, like the old days in Europe would have had them in a cage or something. We could see who was going where. How many marshals do you have in the service?
Right now, there's approximately 750 marshals, and that number fluctuates. We do have some attrition going on with retirements and marshals leaving to go to other agencies.
When I decide as a marshal to go to other agencies, what does that mean?
What will happen is
I take a test to be a state policeman?
The majority of the marshals are college educated, and it's kind of a prime picking for some of the other agencies.
Oh, really?
And a lot of the marshals will go off to the municipalities or go to the state police.
Yeah, I would think state police it'd be a good beck and call for them. But that's traditional. What are the hours? Are they strictly in court hours, or are they all over the place?
No, the hours vary depending on what district you're assigned to. New Haven and Hartford work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
So you have 3 shifts?
Yes, like a traditional department.
Yeah, working at the factory or whatever.
Some of the smaller counties or districts, Tallinn, they're more of a 7 in the morning until 6 at night type operation, Monday through Friday. Are there,
for example, in transport, do you have to have a minimum of 2 marshals in transport? We need one of those little white vans. Or if you were dealing with a capital crime felon, do you have to have 4? I mean, do you go by
It varies. Normal transport would probably be 2 marshals to each vehicle. The vehicles vary in size. You can have as few as 1 or 2 people on that vehicle, or as many as 22. It varies. If it's a high-profile matter, there's a little more planning that goes involved, and there's more marshals involved. There might be an escort unit following that vehicle or a tail unit. And at some points, we'll also work with the state police to move the prisoner.
If you need arms, if you need to have the feeling that you need to be armed with firearms, do the state police come with you, or do you arm yourselves?
We would coordinate that with the state police.
Right, so you're still unarmed. The marshals
would probably remain unarmed because they have to have physical contact with the prisoners, and the state police would provide the arm.
Yeah, one of the provisos for it's not like it's sacrificial lamb, but one of the reasons for the unarmed provisos is so that you don't lose your, because there have been some very, very bizarre cases. I think there was one in Georgia and there was one in South Carolina where a judicial marshal or sheriff, whatever their title was unarmed by a prisoner, and he went on a shooting spree in the court.
Correct. The big one was in Georgia, where I don't, his name slips me, but that's
not a nice man.
No, where he beat the deputy unconscious, took her firearm, went in, killed the judge, killed the prosecutor, and then went on a shooting rampage, I think, for over a period of 48 hours. And that was and it actually killed the deputy outside the courthouse, and they're all armed. And, that's why we look at it. We say, well, they're all armed, and they still could not prevent that, and actually they introduced the weapon. So we're always weighing, do we introduce the weapon, or do we prevent the weapons from coming in? And because of the close contact that we have with the prisoners, it's still kind of, catch-22, what's better? Do we arm, not arm?
Hey, listen, there are law enforcement officers that get disarmed.
Correct.
They get their guns taken away from them. It really is per case. But I also think that there is if I'm not mistaken, in Connecticut, when a defendant is before the judge, he's not handcuffed. They're not handcuffed.
Depending on the hearing type and the behavior of the defendant. If it's just a straight sentencing where the jury's not there, the judge and the defendant isn't behaving, the judge may allow us to go ahead and handcuff the person.
So the judge has the ultimate say on that?
Ultimately, it'll be discussed with the judge, and the marshals would explain what the security risks of the person, and usually the judge sides with the idea of whether or not the person should be cuffed or not cuffed.
You're dealing in state courts. In the federal courts, it's marshals are still servicing protection of the judge.
Correct. The marshals in the federal courts, they have marshals, and they also have contract security. So when you first come through the metal detectors, those are contract security officers that are trained by the U.S. Marshals to do the screening, and then internally with the judge's security and other things that they're doing, like the Fugitive Task Force, those are the actual U.S. Marshals.
If you've been doing this for, and I can't believe you got 3 kids in college. I mean, you're a very young-looking man.
All at the same time.
Yeah, it's got to be the rum at night. It's got to be
and to pass a cup around.
Yeah, and they're all going to Yale. Good for you.
All some pretty expensive schools.
Yeah, right. Good for you. I love it. Yeah, I did that. So there's sympathy here for that. If not 3-2, it was like 3-2-1, and then we all celebrated. We're talking about number of kids in college that you had at one time, and Mr. Murphy is fortunate enough to have 3 kids in college at one time, that's why he came in here in sandals and sackcloth, because he can't afford a suit. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We'll be right back. I'm going to do my first break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about courts, marshals, what you guys can expect. Don't be afraid. Just these people are really there to help you. Even if it is a traffic violation, it's not the end of the world. And if it's something more, it's still not the end of the world. We'll be right back. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We are into our second segment with O'Donovan Murphy, who is the director of the Connecticut Judicial Marshal Services. Basically, the marshals in Connecticut used to be the sheriffs, deputy sheriffs. The marshals took on that service as not only by name but also by responsibility. And they transport prisoners. Primarily, they work for the judicial department. They protect the judges in the courtrooms, and they also make sure that the people before the courts are orderly and in place. And the decorum of the court is extremely important. Cell phones don't go off, and people are... The marshals are kind of, not disciplinarians, but monitors. I think a monitor of discipline, if somebody's talking a little too loud, if the phone goes ding-a-dang-a-ding, it's a marshal that'll usually come up to you and say,
Correct. I mean, they should discreetly constantly remind people of the rules of the court and the decorum.
Yeah, the decorum is very formal, and really, and it really has to be with the stuff that's being pushed out of a courtroom. I mean, it's very serious material. People's lives can change in an instant in a courtroom.
Right, and it's a fine line. I mean, the marshals know it's a sensitive matter for the people that are there. So it's a fine line between enforcing the decorum and kind of respecting the momentary lapse of judgment that people may have, and not overwhelming them with the authority that the court is giving.
Yeah, from what I mentioned to you, I have a court authority at non-court who basically very high grades for the marshals in terms of what they do.
Yes. Recently there was a survey done by the public, and they rated every facet of the court, the clerk's office, and just dealing with the court in general. And the marshals actually received a 99.9% satisfactory rating.
It's like Ivory Snow,
right? Which
that's a soap. Did you know Ivory Snow was 99% pure?
I did.
You're old enough to remember that?
It's a soap that floats.
My God.
I know
where's the water you drink? I want to drink out of that well.
I know the story behind why it floats.
Yeah, they put too much. They whipped it or something.
It too long.
Okay, we're going to have you back. We're going to play checkers and stuff. This is really good. The decorum in a courtroom is extremely formal, but it also is kind of at the dictate of the judge. If the judge has a sense of humor and can go back and forth. But again, a judge can have people appearing before him or her that, you're looking at 3 or 4 or 5 years in prison, there's some serious stuff.
Correct. The marshals actually go by a very thick book of policies and procedures that are approved by the branch. Most of the judges are familiar with the rules and guidelines that have been set for the marshals. But there's also a lot of interaction where the marshals will inform the judges of their concerns or vice versa. And some judges do have a little more of a lax demeanor because they feel like they can get more done. And then there's other judges who are strict, and the marshals try to find the kind of the median between both, where they can maintain order.
And that's the key.
Correct.
The order. There are days the courtroom will be filled and jammed. We had the chief clerk from Litchfield come in. His name slips my mind right now, but he was a really fine young man, been in the court system for a long time. And, they kind of keep the system going in terms of who's won the paperwork. And there's a lot to a guy appearing in front of a judge. I mean, you don't just say, see you there on Tuesday. I mean, you got paperwork coming out of your arms and legs. I mean, it's a big process.
Correct. There's a lot of paperwork. There's also a lot of paperwork behind the scenes. Once the marshals receive the paperwork, that paperwork has to make it over to the correctional facility, and then vice versa, getting that person back out. The prisoners aren't necessarily kept at the closest correctional facility to the court. So there might be 20 steps to get a prisoner from corrections actually in front of a judge, and then probably half as many to get them back to their. Well,
it's like you have a bus route. I mean, you're sitting there and picking up people from one court, and HCC. HCC always sounded like a hockey team to me until my wife came into my life, and come to find out it's the Hartford Correctional
Center.
Yeah, and I'm saying, ooh. And it's not a pleasant place even from the outside. It's, and none of these places are. These are penitentiaries. These are places where people are confined.
Right. None of the correctional facilities are nice. It's not a place that anybody would want to go to. And I know sometimes there's a perception that the prisoners are kind of coddled and treated nicely.
Right.
That's a perception. It certainly isn't. Anything nice about it.
I got to tell you that I've met a number of people as they come out from these facilities because of what my wife does, and many of them you get the sense that this guy just fell off the truck. I mean, he had a bad day, and it turned into a really bad day, and then once you're in the system, it's pretty tough to break out.
Correct. You'd be surprised by the fact that even some of the prisoners who commit really heinous crimes are or people who did things in the spur of the moment or just kind of went down the wrong path.
Stupid, yeah.
I always think about the time when I was actually working in a lockup at 235 Church, which is the Part A lockup for New Haven. And there'd be days you'd have 30 prisoners, all of them are there for murder, and none of them are over 30 years old. And one of the men who was right about my age at the time showed me a book in Hebrew. And he had been in jail at the time for about a year. And he said, look what I taught myself how to do. And he actually taught himself how to read Hebrew. And I thought, well, what a waste of a life that you're smart enough to do that.
Yeah.
And
yes, you see a lot of that. You see guys that could have been rocket scientists,
correct,
quite literally, and it's gone.
We had somebody one time take a pen and a piece of paper, and they drew a pen sketch of the lockup, and you'd have thought that some artist out of New York did it, and he did it in a matter of a couple hours.
Yeah, but you're right, and that's the reflection that I've had. It's somebody jumped off the bus and just didn't hit the sidewalk.
Correct.
It's stupid.
Which is also tough for the marshals, and we've talked about this. The marshals actually see both sides of this, so they're downstairs and they're seeing these people either as these real villains or in most cases as these people who have made terrible choices but who are actually kind of decent people. And then they have to go upstairs and see the victims' families who are devastated by what these people have done, and then deal with the pain of the victim's family, and then also see people that they see as people at this point go off to jail for these extended 60 and 70-year sentence and life sentences after they've, I don't want to say they built a bond, but they've come to understand that they're
human beings.
They're humans, and they're not, these terrible people.
And they're not cutouts. Yeah. But what you're basically talking about is a sense of empathy.
Correct.
That they have with everybody around them. And some people you can, kind of generate to more than others. There are other people, no matter what you do, you couldn't.
Oh, no, there's definitely some people who
should
never, ever get out. Ever.
Yep. And I think there are a lot fewer than we imagine.
Correct.
But there are more people that I have experienced that made the wrong turn. They did something stupid.
Right. Absolutely true.
What has gotten me, and we're digressing a little bit, but the people that really could have been the Rembrandts or could have been, the Hebrew instructors at a yeshiva, basically they're in the system.
Yes.
I've seen that happen with kids. That I get the sense that police officers will stop certain people in the town because they're pretty sure they're going to find something. So the system compounds,
right?
And they do. Whereas if we were doing an infraction or if we were doing something bad, didn't have a record, we could drive by that policeman 100 times.
Correct.
But once you're into the system and you got the mark of Cain on you, you're really screwed.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm sure it does happen. It's unfortunate.
No, it does happen. I'm not looking for verification. I know it happens. Right. It's a question of what can you do to break that? And I don't know that you can. I think that's human nature. Right. I think you sit there and it's the kind of thing, the law enforcement people are supposed to enforce the law, and that's what the law is. It used to be you couldn't have a fifth of whiskey.
Right.
And now marijuana's okay, kinda. I mean, somebody help me here. I mean, and Oxycontin's turning into something really bad.
Oh, yeah,
well, how many guys? I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm sure you've heard this before. A mother of 3 children in suburban. With a swimming pool, and Daddy was a professor at school, and Mommy was on the PTA, and the girls were all, long-haired, kind of, dresses and like that. And Mommy broke a knee or had to have a hip operation or did something like that, and was on Oxycontin for an extended period of time. She's serving 7 years in jail now because she was breaking into the neighborhood, stealing jewelry or whatever she can, and became an unrepentant lawbreaker.
Right. Prescription drug addict.
Yeah, and to the point where it destroyed the family. What do you do?
Yeah, it's sad. And I just saw, I think it was maybe 60 Minutes just did a story on that, the prescription drug epidemic that's going on.
Well, the question is, where did it come from? I mean, what did we do when you and I were kids? Morphine was something that they'd give us in an eyedropper, and
that was it. They didn't send you home with the bottle.
Yeah, and a prescription to get more.
You took a Tylenol.
Yeah, when did it change?
I know. It's the generation. Cure me now, feed me now, promote me now. I mean, I just think it's a generational thing.
Yeah, but what about the doctors? What about the pharmaceutical companies? That's what you look at and you say, wait a minute, guys, Yeah. I mean, I think Rush Limbaugh was given credit for having been addicted to Oxycontin because he had something, and he went deaf as a result of using the stuff.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It really, truly is.
How do you counter it? How do you get through it? That's your assignment for Monday.
I'll send you my
4-page.
I'll send you my take on it.
Yeah, 4-page. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We have O'Donovan Murphy with us. Mr. Murphy is the director of the Connecticut Judicial Marshal Services. We'll be right back. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We have O'Donovan Murphy with us today, and that is his name, O'Donovan. And he said, I met him. I met him when we were coming in, and I said that's like having a lawyer named Mordechai Rabinowitz. I mean, there's no doubt of the ethnic background of that person. And O'Donovan Murphy, if there's any doubt about an Irish background, there it is. It's gone. Now, he is the chief of the Judicial Marshal Services. You said you have about 750 people?
There's about 750 marshals, and we're going to put a class together, another 40.
How many courtrooms are you guys monitoring and protecting?
There's 44 courthouses. I'm not quite sure how many courtrooms that would comprise of.
I meant courthouses.
So there's 44 courthouses, then there's 2 24-hour lockups that we man, and then also the centralized transportation unit.
What are the lockups that the marshals man?
There's the Hartford lockup at 101 Lafayette Street, and then 1 Union Avenue in New Haven, which were manned by the marshals. So it transitioned over from the sheriffs.
Now, HCC is a Hartford Correctional Center. Now, does that feed all of the courthouses and police departments from Hartford County? Do they take them on, or do they spread them out? Because there's somebody that can be arrested, and most police stations have a 24-hour lockup potential, so that you can see the judge in the morning. Correct. Usually, they don't have it so that you stay there for a week. They send you someplace that's supposed to keep you incarcerated.
Correct. Each PD has to, or each arresting agency has to present their arrestee within 48 hours for arraignment. So at some point on the next court business day, either we would go to the PDs and pick the prisoners up, or they would bring them to our lockup, and we would present them. Once they're held on bond, then they're turned over to the Department of Corrections. So in the Hartford case, if they were held on bond in Hartford, in the Hartford County area, they would end up over at HCC, correct?
HCC is kind of the hub for
Hartford County.
Yeah, but it also is a place where people are incarcerated. They can be there for a couple of years.
There are people serving sentences. Most of those people are being used in jobs and things there. Otherwise, if they're serving more than a year, they generally send them out to other facilities that are more long-term, like in Cheshire.
Yeah.
They would go down to Cheshire.
Yeah, Oswald or Osmond or
Summers,
like that. Okay. And those are scary places. I mean, you go to Summers and you don't even want to drive by it. I mean,
correct.
Those are scary places. Yes. You have, all the wire and.
It's prison.
Yeah, really.
It's prison, in the TV sense of prison, it really truly is prison.
Yeah, and this is not something in a movie. This is like for real. What do you do in terms of the transport for male-female? Is there a segregation in terms of the female prisoners? They don't go to HCC. They go to Fox?
The female prisoners actually are housed at York Correctional Center.
Or York, rather.
Niantic. What we do is we know days in advance who's coming to court, and we'll decide then who can be with who needs to be separated, where they're going. Corrections is pretty good at trying to get the prisoners to the closest correctional facility in relations to the court.
To the court.
So they will start their transport at around 4 o'clock in the morning to try to get them as close to the court as they can. We'll start ours around 6. At that point, we'll go to the community jails and to different facilities, pick up the prisoners, get them to court, and then we do that same shuffle at night, getting them back out and back to the correctional facilities.
For female prisoners for housing, they'll go to York. You only have one female facility in the state, is that correct?
Correct. Everyone goes to York. They'll come out and they will go to certain courthouses sort of as a distribution center for us, and then we will get them from those courthouses out and then back, and then at the end of the night, corrections will come to 2 locations and pick the females up and get them back to York, except up in New London, we'll bring them directly back to the correctional facility.
Yeah, it's close enough. That's 20 miles, 30 miles away, or whatever it is. But it's, I was surprised that there was only one female facility in the state.
Yeah, I mean, the female population seems like it's leveled off. For a while, it was growing. When the economy was really bad, we saw an increase in females, but that seemed to have leveled off. So I think it fits the need right now.
Have you seen, in your span of experience, have you seen an increase in any particular demographic population? Have there been more Hispanics going to jail as opposed to blacks, as opposed to Irish people, as opposed to... No, I'm being serious. Are you seeing, or is it just kind of universal flat?
I think it's a universal change. I think age-wise, we've seen an increase in people between the ages of 24 and 17 getting into serious trouble.
So getting younger,
getting into serious trouble. So I think we have seen that, but I think from a demographic standpoint,
ethnic and like that.
No, that hasn't changed.
So it's not a case of more white kids now or fewer black kids or more. It's just
no, I don't believe so.
No,
absolutely.
You haven't seen it. What about the older people or the intensity? Is it more misdemeanors? Is it more? There's some strange stuff out there that you can get thrown into jail for. I mean, these guys at the legislature ought to all go and visit these prisons for a couple of weeks, because a restraining order and the kind of implication of restraining order breach is it's mind-boggling. I mean, I know guys that have gone to jail for 3 or 4 or 5 years because of restraining order.
For violation of the restraining order.
And they're drunks. They went to see their wives, and they're drunk as a skunk,
I may be speaking out of turn, but I think a lot of times when some of them will come in, I don't think they fully understood
they didn't.
Restraining order.
I'm sure.
And they thought it was okay to call because she asked.
Give me a call, honey.
Right, it's okay now, and they go back and they find themselves.
And the cop comes in with her. Come here.
On the wrong side of the fence again.
Yeah. And then what happens is they get logy, lazy, and they don't go to court because they're all upset. So now they have a failure to appear on top of the protective order breach, and they're in jail for 37 years. I mean, I'm being facetious, but all of a sudden, here's this poor cab driver.
Yeah.
Now he's got a record.
I've coached for years, and I've mentored people, and I go to the schools, and when I tell the kids all the time, it's really easy to stay on this side of the fence. But once you get on the other side of the fence, sometimes you get caught in the wash, and it's hard to get back out.
Yeah.
So don't go on that side of the fence for any reason.
For anything, yeah. And if a police officer says something, say, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just do it.
Correct.
You're not your friend. He's not supposed to be your friend. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's an easy formula. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. But that really, it's like the young woman who had a 3-child family, had a hip operation, and now she's in jail for 7 years.
Right.
There's something wrong with that because she didn't start out that way. It's not like she was a habitual criminal.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen all different things. I don't know if you're familiar with the young lady who got into Yale, couldn't afford didn't get into Yale, so she went down and decided to do a different transcript. She got into Yale, and I think she was a senior when they finally figured out she shouldn't have been there. And they arrested her for the tuitions and fees and grants that they had given her and charged her with like a larceny.
And she's in jail now?
Yes.
Well, good Good for her. Punish her. Yeah, that's stupid.
So, I mean, people go to jail for all varieties of reasons.
Well, it's not the going to jail. It's the reasons for going to jail. And some of them are almost serendipity, and others are fraught with evil.
Right.
And you've got to be able to see the difference. And I get scared when I think of a society that will put somebody, and I think it's an awful lot of cover your butt stuff happening, will put somebody who has done something like visited his ex-wife or wife when he was half drunk, and then because he was upset, the judge gets bad at him because he didn't come to court, and then they increase the bond to the point where the guy can't come up with it because now it's gone from $10,000 to $50,000, and now all of a sudden he's got an inmate number that's going to stay with him for the rest of his life, and now he's into the system.
Right.
Because you want to hire him, he comes out, and you're going to hire him as your carpenter?
Right.
Well, what did you do? Well, I didn't really do anything bad. Right. Yeah, right. I've yet to meet anybody that is a felon that did anything bad.
Some of them will admit
well, I did a bad thing on Monday.
Yeah. Some will admit.
How do you rectify that? You're the man of the hour.
It's tough. I mean, the law is black and white, and
but nothing's black and white other than you and me.
But all the circumstances are gray and a variety of other colors, and I think that's why it's a tough job for the judges and prosecutors to kind of sort through.
Well, I've asked these same questions to David Gold. Yeah. And he goes, and he tries to answer it as best he can.
I'm sure it's a tough situation when you're sitting up there, and even under restraining orders, you make the decision to let the guy kind of go, and then he does something horrible, and then you're living with that for the rest of your life. So I'm sure it's a tough call for them. At all.
Well, they just had that in Middletown,
right?
Where somebody jumped off a bridge with their baby.
Yes.
And the judge said, "Well, it's strange," and did exactly what I thought. I'm saying a lot more should be done because restraining orders to act on them as if they're, you're dealing with axe killers. But all of a sudden you got one.
And then it happens.
Yeah.
I used to work, I won't say the judge's name, even though he's not a judge anymore, he retired. He would actually, if the victim was in the courtroom with the person that, for the restraining, he'd call the person, "Are you still afraid of him?" They go, "No." He goes, "All right, you're all set." I would, that was years ago. I don't imagine any of them would ever do that now. But
why? Why wouldn't they? Because that seems like a common sense thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but he seemed to handle it that way. But I mean, like I said, I think they make some super tough decisions.
Yes, they do.
Sure they're tormented with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not faulting the judges on this one. I'm faulting the system.
Correct.
Because the system requires certain things to be done, and you're sitting there saying, now. The restraining orders started kicking in high gear because they were kind of c'est la vie a number of years ago. It's like, you got a restraining order. Yeah, okay.
Right.
But when, a lawyer and her client get shot down in a Middletown garage, you got a problem. Right. Or when a state police officer comes in and shoots his Newington police girlfriend.
Correct.
You got a problem. And then shoots himself, and all of a sudden everybody's looking at, okay, who did this?
Right.
So it's cover.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when things like that happen, the cases like you said, where the person's just intoxicated, they kind of get lumped
in with the killer,
with all the horrible things. It's kind
because
of
that's
kind
the
of
potential.
A bigger net just
that's
to make
the
sure.
Potential.
Correct.
If we dealt with law on potential, that's almost like future crimes. You think about it. They made a movie, and they said, he's going to do a crime in October. Yeah, but it's June. No, but I see. He's going to do it in October. So we're going to send him to jail now. This is the Phil Mikan Show. We'll do a summary with Mr. Murphy. You should be calling you captain or something. I mean, aren't you a captain? This is the Phil Mikan Show. Be right back.
Have a topic idea for a program? Email it over to phil@philmikan.com.
This is the Phil Mikan Show. All of us at one time or another appear in a courtroom. For the majority of us that do, we're there for what they call an infraction. We went through a stop sign, or you may have thrown paper on the street and the police officer next to you got upset. He had a bad day, so he wrote you a ticket for littering. Or you threw something out of your car or window. Those are called infractions. They're not major breaches of the law, but they are kind of naughties. And you'd go and the judge or somebody, or you admit to it and you pay your fine and you go home and that's it. If you get a number of those, they kind of stack up on your record, motor vehicle record, and that basically is where it would stack up, someplace where they can. But every once in a while, there are people who you know who are everyday kind of went to high school with me people who have a breach of peace because they got drunker than a skunk and got into a fist fight and the officer got angry and this and that. And usually that's a one-time event. They'll never do it again. They sit there and they either stop drinking, slow down drinking, or don't go to the party. But every once in a while, there are some people who get trapped into a system which is structured to protect us. And the protection of the society is very real. We are in a fragile boat, and we are basically into a very fragile system. And I've had judges sitting here, and I'm going to talk with Mr. Murphy about this, and I've had more than one of the judges that sat there and said the only reason the judicial system works, the only reason what I as a judge say matters is because the citizenry expressly respects the judge and the judiciary. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And like I was saying earlier, I certainly would not want to spend my day trying to sort out what's the better judgment.
That's got to be mind-boggling. Yeah.
Or taking someone's child or someone's home. I'm sure those are decisions that they really must labor with. And maybe because they do it so much, the perception might be that it's kind of just going through the motions type thing. But I can't imagine from knowing many of the judges that any of them take any of that with any grain of salt or light at all.
Have you been impressed with the judiciary? You know, you've been around these people for a long time, male and female. Is it something that you find yourself respecting in spite of, you know?
Oh, no, I do. You know, one of those things, if you pull back the curtain, you wouldn't like what's going on behind the scenes. I have to actually say that I feel comfortable. In the 27 years that I've been here, I feel comfortable. I don't think I've ever seen something I went, ooh. You know, I feel comfortable with what I see behind the scenes and the branch actually trying to be open, having open access, and trying to make judgments in a fair and impartial way. I do think that truly is the mission of the branch, especially under the new Chief Justice.
Yeah, I like her.
Yes.
I think she does a good job, and she's tends to be quite candid with when she does express herself. Justice Espinosa has made some friends, and they're writing about her now in ways that it's kind of interesting. But the fact that they can do that the Supreme Court can sit there and you know disagree with each other in terms of their findings and why they're doing it. Right. I think that's an interesting process. They don't sound like rubber stamps. They sound like they're really doing their own thing.
And I think that's the culture of the whole branch at this point. The branch has its own internal audit unit, which is actually going out more so looking for the behavior of employees. So maybe I'm following the rules, but I'm not doing it in a nice enough way. And we routinely have those meetings to find out. We call them secret shoppers. Where they'll come and they'll do certain things in the court, whether it's just looking for guidance, answers, and not only whether the answer was given, how was it given. So those are things that didn't exist.
How long have you had that test profile?
That's been going on, I think, for about 5 years now.
That's an interesting test profile. Because the commercial guys did that.
Right, and it works.
And, you know, you go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever, and you got 5 guys in their aprons standing around, and you're looking for something, and they walk by you, and you go, oops.
You know, and if I'm the clerk or the marshal or the judge, and someone's asking me questions, and I'm not giving them the answer, I'm giving the answer in this kind of rude, callous, dismissive way, I don't know if that's really a citizen or if that's someone who's going to report it, and they're going to find out later. And, you know, I think that helps. I think that I've seen a change more so, I think, in the clerk's behavior, who have to be overwhelmed. And the marshal's
that's got to be one of the tougher jobs in the court system, is the clerk, because that's like the funnel,
constantly being overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's the head of the funnel. It's unbelievable. Well, I've got to tell you, O'Donovan Murphy, that you've been a really good guest, and I'd like to invite you back again. Okay. Maybe if you want to bring a couple of your favorite felons, you can bring Charlie the Axe Killer or something, and we can talk to him about how it felt to be, in prison. I mean, whatever. But I really would like to have you back to talk more about the judicial system.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming. You've been a great guest.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is the Phil Mikan Show. Tomorrow, we're looking to have a couple of senators come in. I think that's. I basically said no to it because of the time restrictions that were placed on it. So we'll be doing something else. I'm working on that now. And Friday, I think I have another senator walking in. What we're doing, as always, is we're trying to make something happen on the air that you, as our listener, our audience, will be able to take home with you and get a sense. The courts in Connecticut are your courts. You pay for them. The people that work there are basically employees of yours. Now, you got to understand that. And when you go in there, you're supposed to go in there a little shaky, unsure, and perhaps nervous, depending on why you're there. And the people that are in those courts are there to not only service the law, but they're also there to service you, the citizen. And you have a right to expect that. And the marshals have proven by a number of people that I've talked to be one of the best servicing agents in the judicial system. Trust the marshal, be nice, and always say yes to the police officer. Well, at least that's what I used to tell my kids. This is the Phil Mikan Show. See you tomorrow.